Bibbenberg, December 937. How old was he? Osrith stood with Finan, looking east, over the sea, to where Utad Uhtredsson's body had drifted, aflame, not 2 weeks before. They had not been out of each other's company. In fact, Osrith intended never to be out of Finan's company. He gripped her hand. He was 20 at death hand done, Finan told Osrith, he too refusing to name the man to whom he was bonded. So old, quite old. And yourself? Finan turned his eyes from the sea and looked back to Osrith. I'm quite young, he told her. Not old at all. Did you know them? The people he spoke of, who Benedetta said he spoke of, near the end. Utad's demise had come quickly. He had never really recovered from his injury at Brunanburg. Benedetta, the ex-slave whom he had rescued and brought back to Bibbenberg, not knowing at the time that Edith, his previous wife, had died of a fever, was never far from him when Finan and Sifik between them had brought Utad to his bed. Leofric, I so old. Finan shook his head. Before my time in Wessex with him. Leofric died a death hand done. As did Iseult. He did tell me about that time. And Osrith knew about Mildrith, for she had served her, in her reclusivity at Lord Odder's estate, before joining the nunnery at Exeter. Hallig, and it seemed that Finan jumped, then, when he heard the neigh, but he did not let go of her hand. In fact, he held it tighter. I knew Hallig. He met Hallig in Wessex. He too fought a death hand done. Accompanied him to Northumbria. Died when we were enslaved. Osrith gave Finan a smile, although she knew she was not fooling him. If he was prepared to talk about his time in enslavement, it was because he was hiding the fact that he did not want to talk about Utad's death. The slave ship had been where they had both met, keeping each other alive until they had a chance to escape. Hallig had been the unfortunate wretch, shot in the leg and then strapped to the front of the slave ship. Utad had told Hild once, when Osrith had been overhearing two friends having what they thought was a private conversation, that he didn't know what was worse, when Hallig was screaming as he drowned and died of hypothermia, or when his screaming finally stopped. And Leofric was Osferth's uncle, Finan told Osrith. Reminded her, for she did know this. But it was a long time ago. Osferth had died near Seaster. Her nephew, who had gone by the name Oswald before dying at Brunanburg, had been there as Osferth lay dying after a Norse raid while he commanded a Trumpkofer. Don't think about it, Finan cautioned Osrith, as her eyes drifted north, to her lands of Berwick. She had been the lady there since she had married Senid, Constantine's second cousin, since just after young Finan had been born, nearly 25 years. But on her return to these lands, her way had been barred by Alba warriors. Alba warriors she knew. Osrith had chosen her side and was living with the consequences. Young Dubkan had, at least, allowed her entry to the hall to remove her possessions, which had been packed away, and were waiting for her. Kaltigar, Rhea and the children, and Bean, at least, all had said a brief goodbye to her. What had caused such a parting Osrith might still have been guessing at, had it not been that the Berwick landsmen, who had been trained by the Alba warriors, who had been once trained by her, had been surrounded by an army. Those who had survived Brunanburg, it seemed, or had never fought there, been, one of Senid's kin, would be taking over the management of Berwick, and Osrith had ridden back to Bibbenberg to ask her nephew, young Utad, for shelter. Finan had met her, and she had explained. And he had not left her side for nearly 6 weeks. They will be well, you've no need to worry. Yes, worry was what Osrith had. Worry, and concern about the people who lived on her lands. Were the families to the west safe? Sometimes, the winter brought famine and brought rivers to raid grain stores. Were her fishing boats secure? Had Kaltigar managed the blood month slaughter? Had Samhain been remembered throughout the lands, as observed by the majority of her people, the majority being Britons of the Old North? When the new year comes, I will go back, and see the people, Osrith promised aloud. Only an oath spoken outside a person's own head was binding. Something happened there. Something more than Constantine reclaiming the land. I can tell. And I will be with you, Elaine, Finan told her, taking her other hand. Whatever will come of it, and... But whatever Finan was about to say, Osrith did not find out, for his hawk-like eyes had spotted a figure on the lower headland. "What, there?" Finan traced the figure with his finger in the air as the horse came more into view. Still holding Osrith's hand, he wrinkled his forehead to get a better view. As the white horse came up the winding path to the front of Bibbenberg, Finan strode to the front of the ramparts, Osrith's hand still in his, and she strode after him. They waited as the horse came into view, its rider making the horse tread carefully over the rocky path to home. Or at least one place this rider had once called home. Finan held Osrith's hand firmly as both of them looked down from the rampart gate to the person who had, 2 days before Christmas, come calling. Osrith's heart beat hard and fast in her chest. It was young Finan, their son.